Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Welcome to our EIC 2016, the number 10 EIC. That's what I wanted to say. I will talk today primarily about the new role of the CIO and CISO 2020 about enabling disruptive innovation. So when we talked, so my colleague Jörg, who's the main organizer of the event, I talked about what will be the topic of the keynote. We came upon this because we think it's very important to rethink the way our IT organizations are structured. But before I start, I just want to quickly quickly have a look at 10 years EIC and more than 10 years, in fact, some 12 years, Kuppinger Coal. So back in 2007, we started. We started 1 year later with our European Identity and Cloud Awards, increased our topic to identity and cloud and more information security. In between, we moved our headquarters to Wiesbaden. Then the first 3 or 4 have been at a other location. Then we moved to the Dolce here, where we, I think, are the 6th consecutive year. And so over time we grew. We are right now more than 700 attendees from more than 30 different countries, spanning from the US to Taiwan and Australia. So really a global event, I would say. And I'm happy and I'm proud of my team, which made 10 years EIC such a success. So let's go ahead. I think one of the fundamental changes we are currently observing is that IT is changing fundamentally. So we had a shift towards some sort of centralization. In fact, some very big players are in the cloud service provider area, etc. But right now we see decentralized, distributed approaches. Blockchain, we had a workshop on blockchain yesterday. The Internet of Things, where we have a broadly distributed range of things, and all the other things. And so we see the world is in fact becoming more complex, some sort of decentralization. And it's simply that we don't have the one IT which is handled centrally anymore. We have to understand that all these things are more complex and they are moving closer and closer to all areas of the business. So, having said this, I want to start with looking a little bit at the digital transformation. And I have created a picture here I've called the circles of change. So, it starts with external drivers around the digital transformation. So, dynamic partnerships, a changing competitive landscape, rapid innovation we have to face. What I find particularly important is the product to service transition. So formerly products have been sort of the most important thing. Right now it's more services are the most important thing. The ubiquitous connectivity, everything and everyone becomes connected. Ever-changing regulations as one of the challenges, ever-increasing attacks we are facing here. The next layer in here is the intrinsic change we are facing. So this intrinsic change is about what do we need to change in our organization. And I think there are 3 main areas. One is agility. So in a changing competitive landscape, ever-changing regulations, dynamic partnerships, etc., we have to be agile. We need to be innovative, and we need to have a organizational flexibility which allows us to adapt to new business demands. From my perspective, these are the 3 most important intrinsic changes. The next one here, the overarching themes, so the next circle of change I have here are overarching themes, and in these overarching themes, we have the 3 big things, I think, which are commonly discussed. At least 2 of them are very commonly discussed. One is the Internet of Things, and the other is smart manufacturing, or Industry 4.0, as the Germans tend to say. And the third one I would say is know your customer. So the KYC thing, we need to know our customer, we need to know more about our customer to serve him optimally, also because we collect more and more information about the customer. And moving forward from there, it means we have some key enabling technologies. And these key enabling technologies include things like big data, identity, cognitive and AI, blockchain, which I found very important, the ubiquitous sensors, robotics, security and privacy. So these are, from my perspective, the 7 most important key enabling technologies in this digital transformation. And this includes things like clearly big data to handle customer data. It includes the identity to manage all the relationships of things and persons and so on. It includes security and privacy. And we have to be capable of handling that change, which then means we have to think about how can we achieve competitive advantage in this digital transformation, in this, in fact, ever-changing world. I think the term digital transformation, if you are honest, is a little bit too narrow because it's not about transforming your organization once from non-digital to digital. It's about an ongoing adaptation to new challenges, new business models, and faster change of business. So clearly, customer relations is one of the traditional areas where you can build competitive advantage. It has been important, and it remains important. Product innovation becomes more important. I think we have faster, more rapid change in the market, so we need to be more innovative. We have areas such as product quality, which I personally fear are less relevant than in earlier days. So we throw away stuff when it doesn't work anymore. So probably a smartphone has to live only for 1 or 2 years anyway. So product quality probably is less relevant than it has been in the times, in the days where we used stuff we bought for 10 or more years. That's one of these changes we have. Then to go ahead here, obviously this clicker is not the best one I've ever had. So to go ahead here, we have services. Services become more important. I've talked about the product to service innovation. Business process efficiency, I think the hype is a little bit past. So when I was studying in the 80s, we had this hammer-champy business process re-engineering, and so it was a hype of the business process efficiency. It looks like it's going a little bit down, also because we have more and more standard business processes from the cloud. So we can rely on more proven, standardized services which we can easily purchase from the cloud. We have smart manufacturing, which is an area which becomes more and more important. We have data, obviously, which becomes more and more important. It's very central to our business. And when we move forward here, we also have some other things to look at, such as IT technology. And I think that the capability of being better than others in setting up IT technology, in coding your own applications, etc., is of decreasing relevance because we more and more rely on standardized services we procure from the cloud. So our own ability to be perfect in IT technology is less relevant than it has been before. So we have changes in this competitive advantage area, and that also means that we have to think about how we handle all that. And one of the other changes clearly is and this is a picture I brought up last year in my keynote, this increased connectivity. So everything and everyone become connected. People, organizations, devices, things. This is another area which then affects our competitive advantage. I have the customer relations up on the top of the other slide. And this is an essential part of the customer relation here. And then going further again, one step, I think when we look at competitive advantage from these 2 perspectives I brought up before, there are 5 essential areas we should look at. One is customers. At the end, this is what brings the money. Services, so the shift from service to product. Data analytics and cognitive, a very important thing. Identity, because we need to understand the identities of persons, of things, of devices. And product innovation and manufacturing. So this is where we see still the need to be more innovative, to be also more flexible in manufacturing, smart manufacturing, and to build our competitive advantage around these 5 areas. And I brought up this point that IT is, or IT technology is less relevant for the competitive advantage. I already raised the point that the cloud is a factor here. And I think this is something I'd like to show with this picture here. So where does our competitive advantage come from? From innovation in services and products, data analytics, cognitive, smarter manufacturing, customer relations, identity, I talked about. And that, in consequence, means we also could look at where does sort of a competitive disadvantage come from. Where does it come from? Low elasticity and agility of on-premise IT. High cost and capex of on-premise IT. Cumbersome processes, which we particularly have in on-premise IT when we try to invent all these processes at our own instead of relying on standard services. And clearly, that's true for everything, cloud and non-cloud, failing in security and privacy. These are the potential competitive disadvantages. But the cloud, in fact, today is delivering equal services to everyone at an affordable price. Every medium-sized business, every small business can afford a lot of services it couldn't afford some 5, 10, or 15 years ago. And that means a lot of this competitiveness from IT is disappearing. It can become a competitive disadvantage, in fact. And what we really have today is that utility computing is becoming a reality. So this term, which has been quite popular a few years ago, I think we are far closer to this utility computing than we have ever been before. So what already is a utility I've indicated in green, and it's more to the bottom. So the network is a utility. Servers and endpoint are in business IT more and more a utility. We rely a lot on IaaS. It's really something which is standardized. We don't think that much about it anymore. In the areas of operational IT, so in the manufacturing and in the area of IoT, it's slightly different. There we still have to make some progress in making it in the utility. But we see more and more industrial clouds. We see more and more clouds for the IoT. So even there we have the strengths towards making this a utility. Applications, apps, and things. So if you look at applications in the standard business IT, we rely more and more on cloud services. Our ERP, our CRM, everything from the cloud. Process and function thus also are increasingly a standard capability provided. So we have a shift towards more and more utilities, and so the competitive advantage we can build is more around data analytics and cognitive than around trying to do the utility better than others do it. When we look at this from another perspective, it also becomes clear that IT is shifting into the business. So what we have here is, in fact, is that traditionally, business IT did most of it. So it looked at, and we have the colors here, it looked at IT did operations monitoring, configuration, adaptation, deployment, execution. Then we had, ideally, not in the real world, but ideally, governance as a separate area. We still don't have it in most organizations, but that's a different story. And then we had a little bit of security maybe underneath, maybe not. Again, a different story. But right now, this has changed. And we see a lot of green. Green indicates here the cloud service provider, where operations and monitoring, where deployment and execution are increasingly done by the cloud. Even a part of the security is done here. While business, for cloud services, is doing more and more of configuration and adaptation. So the role of IT, the orange color, or light red color, it's far less than it has been. And when we look at this from the perspective of not only business IT, but operational IT and IoT, of consumer IoT, then we see that even more areas are not really IT. So the business does a lot. The production department, the manufacturing departments already do a lot of their own IT. In the IoT space, businesses are providing the devices. They are doing the IT. So where's the IT department? There's not that much room anymore for the traditional IT department. IT is shifting into the business, which means we have sort of a rise and fall of IT departments to observe. So when we look back over the past decades, one thing is clear: the relevance of IT has grown continuously, and it's even growing exponentially because everything is connected. IT is ubiquitous. Everything has IT in. We use it in our manufacturing. We have sensors in manufacturing. It's everywhere. So IT is becoming more relevant. But when we look at the as-is relevance of IT departments from an overall perspective of where we do IT, then we see some things happen outside of the traditional IT department already. When there's shadow IT, there's smart manufacturing, there are other things. So the as-is relevance has decreased, and if we are honest, the to-be relevance has decreased even more. What does it mean for an IT department? We have to rethink the roles of the IT department and the roles of the CIO. So, rise or fall as CIO. When we look at it from the CIO perspective, what can you do, or what are the options you have? Do you want to become the chief infrastructure officer as CIO? Or do you want to become the chief innovation officer? I think these are the two paths a CIO can take: infrastructure officer or innovation officer. I personally like the term CIO in the sense of chief innovation officer more than the commonly very prominent or popular CBDO, chief business development officer or whatever. I think CIO is a very good term because at the end there's a lot of IT we need to do. And I think this is what we can do here. So when we look at this rise or fall as CIO, in fact, it means the Chief Innovation Officer is sort of the Chief Digital Business Officer. He's fostering the innovation across all areas where IT applies, business, manufacturing things. He's the transformational leader. Or we end up with the new data center manager, where IT started some 20, 30, 40 years ago. Managing the IT facilities, services, internally and externally, more a manager than a leader role. What does it mean for the Chief Information Security Officer, on the other hand? We have sort of these two areas I've just outlined for the CIO. So the Chief Information or Innovation Officer, Chief Business Development Officer, and we have the underlying infrastructure, the IT management. So these are the two layers. Anyway, we need all of it also in the future. So we need clearly people who manage the services on-premise and from the cloud. But we also need to move forward, have an integrated view across all areas. The CISO, from my perspective, has in future to provide the governance, so security, privacy, data protection for business IT, for operational IT, and for IoT. It's, from my perspective, absolutely mandatory that the CISO has a clearly defined governance role for all areas where IT applies. We can't keep that separate anymore. The data protection officer is part of the CISO department, and the CISO, in fact, has to work very tightly with corporate audit, enterprise risk management, however this department is named in your organization. This is where the CISO belongs. It's not that he belongs into an IT department, he belongs to the audit. So, as Sasha already has said, we have the opportunity to do polls, and if you look at your app, the EIC app, I want to just run a quick poll. Is the CISO of your organization already responsible for all three areas of IT, EA, security and business IT, operational IT, and for all the things in IT, IoT? So if you have IoT, if you have manufacturing. So go to the EIC app, menu, polls, click on the item for my keynote, and then you can provide your answer on that. What does it mean for the organization? That's a picture I brought up, I think, 4 years ago for the IT organization, where it talked about IT organizations have to change. IT organizations have to change because we procure services from both on-premise IT and cloud, and we should manage everything as a service in a consistent way. Everything as a service. We need to manage the services, the information, and we need to deliver really business services. IT for a long time talked about business services and meant something like a technical service, which then allows a business application to run. A business service is what the business really wants, based on the concrete business demand. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of businesses went to shadow IT and procured their stuff from the cloud. I think we have to change it a little, this picture. It's not that different, but basically we have sort of the infrastructure part at the center, which is service procurement, production, managing the services, security fulfillment, which is an area of the operational part of IT, the services, and then delivering it to the business. And then we have two main areas. One is sort of the CIO, the other is the CISO, which is innovation and information management. So for all areas of IT, data, analytics, cognitive AI, that's the Chief Innovation Officer. And the CISO, it's information governance, security and privacy, data protection, and also the service governance, which then is a little bit outside of the CISO, but which is part of the entire governance part. So this is where we should, that's an approach to rethink your IT organizations. And I think we need to do it. We need to manage all of IT in a consistent way, and we need to adapt the organization so that it really is capable of dealing with all the changes, the shift toward the cloud, etc. So before I come to the end of my keynote, I want to look at some trend topics. So what are, from my perspective, first of all, because at the end we are doing all this to remain agile, to become more agile, to be ready for the digital transformation. So what are the 15 top innovations for business agility from an IT perspective? I've created here this quadrant where on the x-axis we have something which helps us more in risk mitigation or which helps us more in achieving business value. If it's good for both, it's in the middle. And then we have the emerging technologies at the bottom and the more mature technologies at the top. So what are these 15 top innovations? Cloud identity and access management, I think, is very important. It helps us better dealing with our customers, with all the external parties. It's increasingly mature. Big data and cognitive, massive business value. We have to have it. Still a long way to go, particularly when we look at cognitive regarding maturity. Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing as well, very obviously something we have to get better in. IoT, again, I think very clear here in this area. Identity relationship management, very important. We need to understand how devices and things and persons map to each other. We need to be capable of handling all that for a lot of use cases. And consumer identity management clearly as well. All cloud IAM, consumer IAM, and identity relationship management, tightly related topics. User behavior analytics helps us in risk mitigation. A very hot and increasingly mature topic we should look at. So how can we identify fraudulent behavior? How can we identify hijacked accounts? All of this stuff. Real-time security intelligence as well, very important. How can we collect all the data, analyze at real time, data from logs, from events, etc., analyze it at real time, understand changes in the behavior, changes in the use patterns, etc., and react on it. So becoming better in quickly reacting on attacks and other changes. Machine learning, deep learning, very interesting area, very important, I think, over time for agility. Microservices, yes, Also an important thing, more on the technical, on the development side. Device mesh, I think it's already here. I think a while ago we called it, to some extent, bring your own device. And it's a little bit more than that. It means we have a lot of devices we need to, or we want to use them in a consistent way. Yes, clearly important. Privacy and agility by design, not as mature as it should be, but important for both risk mitigation and business value. Have a look at my blog post. I wrote a lot of posts in the recent months around why privacy by design and security by design increase your business agility. And I think this is a very important thing to look at. Ambient user experience, so having a user experience which always fits to what the user expects. Robotics, some other areas. So some top innovations here I see for business agility. I think that have been all the 15 ones. Oh no, there's another one. Distributed ledgers and blockchain. Last but not least, we had a very interesting workshop on that yesterday, and it's definitely one of these areas which are highly important. So this is, as I've said, one of the other areas. As my final slide, I want to quickly, in 20 seconds or so, look at 5 top innovations from a disruption perspective. Disruption, the act of interrupting continuity, or it differs from change in not being a gradual shift, but a radical one. So we need to reinvent, we need to look at our end-to-end business relations. This is what really is changing in the digital transformation. A lot of things are changing. So back to the re-decentralization here where I started, hyper-connected and supply-demand does not work the same way, the economics, as it did when we produced physical goods here. So what are the 5 top innovations here? Distributed ledgers and blockchain, IoT, consumer IAM and identity relationship management, big data and cognitive, and privacy and agility by design. So if we want to cope with this digital transformation and the disruption, we should look at innovation, and we should try to do IT in a way where more and more IT moves into the business departments, because this is the essence here. IT becomes part of the business departments. With that, I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you so much, Martin. So that was a very broad overview on the strategy of the IT in the company, outside of a company, of IT in general. So I very much appreciate. So now the task of us will be to understand where to put our stakes in that picture. And there's a number of questions. Could you please put up the questions if that... Very good. This is live, by the way, so if you want to add a question just right now, just try it and you will see. The first questions have been rated 3 times, so 1 and +2, so to say. What qualifications should the CISO have regarding these challenges?
A lot of qualifications. I think probably the most important qualification is really a risk management and a governance and qualification. With a rough understanding, at least from breadth, not necessarily a depth perspective of security. So he needs to be good enough in security, but it's more and more about risk and other stuff.
Okay, next question. Please explain whom the CISO, whom the CISO should be reporting to.
I think I brought it up already. It's, from my perspective, the CISO has to become part of the entire enterprise risk management, of the corporate audit, of the enterprise governance structures.
But is it a board member, to be frank?
Usually, as of now, the lead of the corporate audit is directly below the board level. That might change over time, but the CISO clearly is not a board level member, from my perspective.
Okay. Good. And last question, if information security is key to ability, I like that one. Agility. If information security is key to ability, and since many people see security as a roadblock, how to change the perception of the CISO adequately?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's meant key to agility. I think it's up to IT itself to not always talk about why we can't do certain things, but to show options for doing things. And I had a talk, I think 2 years ago in my keynote or so, where I brought up a small matrix saying we should show various options to the business, also indicating the risk, mitigation, impact, and the cost. Then business can make decisions about how much risk it wants to take. So we have to talk business language, and business language is risk. Okay, I think we're running out of time anyway.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you.
And before we go to the next presentation, we will just quickly show, try and look up whether there have been some results of the poll. Can you please put up the poll of Martin's presentation? There you go. Is CISO already responsible for everything that you need? And 56% say yes, and 43% say no. This is really good, actually, because experience shows that it's pretty hard to convince people that are not in business IT to follow governance rules coming from a CISO. So definitely this is a very good picture. Thank you so much for participating in that poll.